The living room was packed with relatives I saw once a year, all gathered to celebrate Mom's 60th birthday. I stood near the bookshelf, nursing a glass of water, watching my sister Amber work the crowd like a seasoned politician. She touched arms, laughed at jokes, transitioned seamlessly between conversations. I'd been at the party for 40 minutes and had spoken to exactly 3 people before they got pulled away by someone more interesting. "There's Claire," I heard Aunt Carol say, not quite quietly enough. "Still hiding by the bookshelf. She's always been like that, brilliant girl but can't handle social situations." "It's a shame," Uncle Richard added. "Such a pretty girl but she just doesn't know how to connect with people." Amber got all the social skills. As if on cue, Amber's laugh rang out across the room. At 34, 2 years my senior, she'd perfected the art of being the person everyone wanted to talk to at parties. 5 minutes. Mom called out. Amber's segment is about to air. Everyone migrated toward the large TV. Amber had been interviewed by the local news about her interior design business's expansion into commercial real estate staging. She'd been talking about it for weeks. I stayed by the bookshelf as the family crowded around the screen. The local news anchor appeared, introducing a segment about local entrepreneurs making waves. Then there was Amber, looking polished and professional, speaking confidently about market trends and her company's growth. It was a good segment. She came across as articulate and knowledgeable. "That's my daughter," Mom announced proudly. The segment lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, the applause was immediate and effusive. "A natural on camera," someone said. "So well spoken," another added. I glanced at my phone. 2:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, my address to the United Nations General Assembly would be broadcast live. I'd been invited to speak about climate adaptation strategies in vulnerable regions, the culmination of 8 years of research and fieldwork. But I hadn't mentioned it to my family. What was the point? They'd proven over and over that they couldn't understand work that didn't fit their framework of success. "Claire, did you see your sister on TV?" Mom asked, finally noticing me. I did. "She did well. Wasn't she wonderful? So articulate." Mom's tone was affectionate but contained an implicit comparison. Where Amber got the charisma, the ease, the social grace, and where I apparently didn't. My phone buzzed. A text from my colleague Dr. Sarah Chin. "We're in the delegates' lounge watching the live stream. You're going to be brilliant. The Secretary General specifically mentioned being excited to hear your recommendations." The Secretary General of the United Nations was excited to hear my recommendations. But here in my mother's living room, I was the awkward daughter who couldn't hold a conversation. "Everyone gather round for the cake," Dad announced. They sang to Mom, took photos, laughed at inside jokes I wasn't part of because I'd missed too many family gatherings while doing fieldwork in Bangladesh and Mozambique and the Marshall Islands. "Speech. Speech," Uncle Richard called out. Mom dabbed at her eyes. "Thank you all for being here. I'm so blessed to have such a wonderful family. Amber with her thriving business and Claire with her important work." Important work. The phrase people used when they didn't actually know what you did. "Amber, we saw you shine on TV today," Mom continued. "You're such a natural. And Claire, sweetheart, you're so dedicated to your research. Even if you're quieter, we know you care deeply about your projects." The distinction was clear. Amber shined. I was quiet and dedicated. One was celebrated, the other was consoled. I checked my phone again. 2:56 p.m. 4 minutes. The cake was served. Conversations resumed. I found myself back near the bookshelf with a plate I wasn't eating from. "Poor Claire," I heard Amber say to her husband Tyler. "She tries, but social situations just aren't her thing. I worry about her sometimes." "She should maybe talk to someone," Tyler suggested. "Like a therapist? For the social anxiety." I didn't have social anxiety. I had social selectivity. I engaged deeply with conversations that mattered and withdrew from ones that didn't. But explaining would only confirm their diagnosis. 3 p.m. Somewhere in New York, in the UN General Assembly Hall, my pre-recorded address was beginning. The live broadcast was streaming on multiple platforms. Journalists from international news organizations were watching. Policymakers were taking notes. And here, my family was discussing Amber's upcoming feature in a regional lifestyle magazine. Then something unexpected happened. The TV, still on the local news channel, suddenly switched. One of my younger cousins, maybe 17, had grabbed the remote. "Oh my God," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Everyone look at the TV." The room turned. On the screen, the UN logo filled the frame, then cut to the General Assembly Hall. And there I was, standing at the podium with the iconic green marble wall behind me. "We are at a critical juncture in human history," my voice came through the speakers, steady and clear. "The communities most vulnerable to climate change are often those least responsible for creating it. The Marshall Islands face existential threats from sea level rise. Bangladesh experiences devastating floods. Mozambique confronts cyclones of increasing intensity." The room had gone completely silent. "That's Claire," someone whispered. "At the UN?" someone else asked, confused. On screen, I continued. "Today, I'm presenting our research consortium's 5-year study on community-led climate adaptation, which includes data from 47 countries and collaboration with over 200 local organizations." My cousin had turned up the volume. Every eye was fixed on the screen. "The Secretary General invited her to speak," my cousin said, reading her phone. "She's like a major climate scientist. There are live tweets from CNN and BBC and, oh my God, she has a Wikipedia page." "What?" Amber's voice was faint. My cousin turned her phone around, showing a Wikipedia entry. "Dr. Claire Hawthorne, born 1990, is an American climate scientist and policy advisor specializing in climate adaptation in vulnerable regions. She serves as lead researcher for the International Climate Resilience Initiative and has advised multiple national governments on climate policy." On the TV, I was presenting graphs and data. "Our research indicates that investing in community-led adaptation strategies yields both better outcomes and lower costs than top-down interventions." "She has a doctorate?" Dad said, sounding stunned. "From MIT," my cousin read. "PhD at 26. She's published in Nature, Science, The Lancet. These are the biggest scientific journals in the world." Mom had gone pale. "Claire never said." "She probably tried," my cousin said. "Oh wow, she testified before Congress last year. And she won the Goldman Environmental Prize. That's like the Nobel Prize for environmental work. It came with $200,000. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. On screen, I was concluding, "The solutions exist. The knowledge exists. What we need now is the political will to redistribute resources, the humility to learn from marginalized communities, and the courage to make systemic changes. The communities I've worked with aren't asking for charity, they're demanding justice." The General Assembly erupted in applause. Delegates from dozens of countries were standing. The camera caught the Secretary General nodding approvingly. Then the feed cut to a news anchor. That was Dr. Claire Hawthorne, whose groundbreaking research on climate adaptation has influenced policy in over 30 countries. Someone turned off the TV. The silence in Mom's living room was deafening. Aunt Carol spoke first. "You spoke at the United Nations." "Yes. And you didn't think to mention this?" There was an edge to her voice. Embarrassment at being caught dismissing someone so accomplished. "I did mention it. At Easter, I said I was preparing for a major international address. Dad asked if I was still doing that climate stuff, and changed the subject to the basketball playoffs." Dad's face flushed. "I didn't realize you meant the UN." I said, "International address on climate policy. What else would that mean?" Mom sat down heavily. "You have a doctorate from MIT. I mentioned my graduation. You were supposed to come, but Amber had a business launch party the same weekend. You said I'd understand. But you never said it was from MIT, Mom protested. "I did. You said, 'That's nice, dear,' and asked if I was dating anyone." Amber had been silent, but now she found her voice. "You let us think you were just doing research. Like a hobby." "I am doing research. It's my career. I've tried to explain my work at probably 24 family gatherings. Every time eyes glazed over or someone changed the subject." "But the UN," Uncle Richard said. "You addressed the United Nations General Assembly." "Today, yes. I've also presented to the European Parliament, advised the African Union, and consulted with ASEAN on regional climate policy." My cousin was still on her phone. "She's trending on Twitter. There are like 50,000 tweets about her speech." 50,000, Amber repeated numbly. "And she's giving a TED Talk next month. Already sold out. 5,000 seats. Mom looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between awe and regret. Why didn't you make us understand? How? The question came out sharper than intended. I tried talking about my research and you called it too technical. I mentioned conferences and you asked why I couldn't find work closer to home. I explained the climate crisis and Dad said it was political stuff he didn't want to discuss. What was I supposed to do? Force you to care? We do care, Mom said. You care now because you saw it on TV. Because other people validated it. But when it was just me trying to share what I was passionate about, it was boring or awkward or too complicated. Her TED Talk from 2 years ago has 12 million views, Tyler said, reading his phone. 12 million, someone echoed. And she's been on CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. She's a regular expert commentator. Each fact landed like a small explosion. My family was discovering my entire professional life through the internet because they'd never bothered to ask. You called me socially awkward, I said quietly, looking at Amber. 30 minutes ago you told Tyler I should see a therapist. But I've given keynote addresses to thousands of people. I've negotiated with government ministers. I've done media interviews in 4 languages. I'm not socially awkward. I'm selective about where I invest my energy. I didn't mean, Amber started. You did mean it. You've always meant it. I'm the quiet one, the awkward one, the one who can't work a room like you can. You used that narrative to dismiss everything I've accomplished. Mom was crying now. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You've been human. You valued what you understood. Amber's local news segment made sense to you. My work was too abstract, too global. But you're brilliant, Dad said, his voice thick. We just couldn't see it. You could have if you'd looked. I sent you my articles. You never read them. I invited you to public lectures. You were always busy. Every time I mentioned awards or grants, the conversation moved on within 30 seconds. My phone buzzed continuously. Messages from colleagues, journalists requesting interviews, organizations inviting me to speak. What do we do now? Mom asked. That's up to you. You can keep viewing me as the awkward daughter who can't hold a conversation. Or you can start seeing who I actually am. We want to see you, Amber said. The real you. I'm so sorry, Claire. Your work matters too, I said. Interior design has value. You help people create beautiful spaces. That's legitimate. But I made you feel small for doing world-changing research. You made me feel different. I learned to be okay with that. Uncle Richard cleared his throat. I called you socially awkward to your face at Christmas. And you'd just come back from advising the president of the Maldives. To be fair, I said fieldwork in South Asia. You asked if I got a tan. The room was silent, everyone processing their failures to see what was right in front of them. Can we start over? Mom asked. Actually learn about your work, ask real questions, be the family you deserved? You can try. Tell us about the UN speech, Dad said. What happens next? So I told them. About the policy recommendations. About the potential funding for community-led programs. About the partnerships forming between nations. About the shift in how the international community approached climate aid. They listened. Really listened. For the first time in years, my family engaged with my work as if it mattered. You're on CNN tomorrow? Mom asked, taking notes. 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. We'll watch. All of us. Amber approached hesitantly. Can I ask about your work? A real question. Of course. The communities you work with, how do you not get overwhelmed by the scope of the problem? It was the first substantive question any family member had asked in years. I focus on the people, I said. Every policy represents real families. The woman in Bangladesh who developed flood-resistant farming. The island elder preserving navigation knowledge. The Mozambican organizer who created early warning systems. Their resilience drives me. Amber nodded slowly. That's beautiful. And important. Thank you for asking. People started leaving, most stopping to apologize. For assumptions made, for dismissive comments, for years of not seeing. My cousin hugged me. You're my hero. I'm studying environmental science because of your TED Talk. I just never connected that you were the same Claire from family parties. You watched my TED Talk? 5 times. I showed it in my environmental club. We quoted you in our proposal to the school board. She laughed. I've been fangirling over you for 2 years without realizing you were my cousin. After most guests left, my immediate family gathered in the living room. I have so many questions, Mom said. Can we have dinner? Just us. Where you tell us everything and we actually listen. I'd like that. Claire. Dad's voice was heavy with regret. I'm sorry I missed your MIT graduation. I'm sorry I've missed so much. We can't change the past. But we can do better. Amber sat beside me. You're not socially awkward. You're focused. You're brilliant. You're literally changing the world while I'm picking out throw pillows. Your work matters, I insisted. Just because mine is global doesn't make it more valuable. The world needs both of us. Maybe. But I need to stop measuring success by social performance and start recognizing substance. As I drove home, my phone continued buzzing. The UN speech had reached millions. Policy makers were engaging with the recommendations. Media outlets wanted interviews. But the messages that mattered most were from my family. Dad sending links to articles about my work. Mom asking for my TED Talk link. Amber requesting a call to discuss sustainability practices for her business. They were trying. Finally, actually trying. The television had changed itself. Or rather, my cousin had changed it, recognizing something important and forcing everyone to pay attention. I wasn't the socially awkward daughter who couldn't hold a conversation. I was a climate scientist addressing the United Nations, influencing international policy, amplifying marginalized voices. My family just needed the world to tell them what I'd been showing them all along. And maybe, finally, they were ready to see it.